My grandpa had this saying he loved to repeat: success is like a glacier. What you see above the surface is nothing compared to what's underneath. I never really got what he meant, at least, not until I found myself becoming that glacier. I'm Emma Johnson, and this is how I went from being the odd one out in my sister's polished, high society life to standing there the night her picture-perfect image started to crack, right in front of everyone. I grew up in a walk-up apartment sitting over my family's Cuban bakery in Miami's Little Havana. Before I even hit 10 years old, I knew exactly what hard work felt like. By the time I was 9, I was folding pastry boxes and rattling off our regulars' names like I'd known them forever. At 13, I was double-checking inventory and pointing out the accounting mistakes my uncle missed. Numeros. Grandpa would yell, flapping around a sticky notepad covered in scribbles. I'd skip over to him, always eager to dig into the numbers. We're spending too much on guava puree, I'd say, squinting at the margins. But if we team up with the cafe across the street and buy in bulk. He'd laugh, tapping me lightly on the forehead. Business brain on a kid, he'd say proudly. One day, you're gonna build something big, mate. While other kids were out kicking soccer balls, I was figuring out profit margins and learning how to scale operations from library books. My parents worked around the clock, from the crack of dawn until long past sunset, to scrape together enough for my scholarship to NYU. I carried that weight every day. I owed them more than just a diploma. By 23, I'd launched a microloan platform fueled by data, built for immigrant communities like the one I grew up in. I called it Solera Capital. By the time I was 28, it had grown into a multi-million-dollar operation. Still, I kept my head down. Let the work speak. I didn't need the spotlight. That's when I met Stephen. It happened at this tiny used bookstore tucked away off Coral Way. I was in yoga pants and an old NYU tee, scrolling through finance articles on my tablet. He came around the corner and knocked over a whole stack of books like a human wrecking ball. "Whoa, sorry about that," he said, rushing to help me gather them up. I laughed, brushing dust off a paperback. "No worries. I'm Emma." "Stephen," he smiled. "Let me buy you a cafecito to make up for the chaos." That little cafecito turned into lunch. Then lunch turned into everything else. Stephen wasn't the type chasing stock tips or IPO dreams. He was a public school civics teacher, grounded, real, and all heart. He believed in people, and that belief ran deep. 6 months later, he proposed. I didn't even blink, I just said yes. My family was over the moon. Well, everyone except my sister, Brenda. Brenda and I were always night and day. She went the classic route: business school, corporate hustle, tailored suits, and boardroom battles. She was the marketing director at Vallon & Cross, one of the flashiest investment firms in Miami. She loved me, sure, but deep down, she didn't take me seriously. Not as a peer, anyway. She made that crystal clear during a family dinner at our folks' place in Coconut Grove. She held her wine like she was judging it in a competition and said, "So you're still juggling the bakery and that little app of yours?" I could have told her that my little app had just locked in a multi-year deal with one of the Southeast's biggest private equity groups. But I didn't. Maybe part of me still liked being the underdog. "Yeah," I said, taking a sip of my cafe. "Still doing both." Brenda smirked. "Well, someone's gotta keep the guava pastries coming. I mean, not everyone gets a fast-track spot at a top firm." Her friend Larry chimed in, always the diplomat. Brenda just closed a huge deal for Vallon & Cross. The CEO gave her a personal shout-out. What none of them knew. That same firm had been using analytical software from my company for over a year, and talks were already underway to expand our partnership. "That's great," I said, and I meant it. Brenda grinned, thinking she'd scored another win. The months rolled by with the usual routine, Brenda tossing little digs at family gatherings, and Stephen reminding me to let it roll off my back. Then she made her big announcement. Brenda was throwing a fancy gala to celebrate her promotion to senior director. At the planning dinner, she looked at me with that tight smile that always meant trouble. Emma, you've done some event and food work, right? Think you could manage the catering staff? Mom clapped like it was the most brilliant idea ever. Perfect. Emma's a business owner, she's great with logistics. I caught Brenda's smug look and smiled right back. Sure, I said smoothly. Happy to help. That night, Stephen pulled me aside. His eyes were soft with worry. You don't have to do this, he whispered. We can say you're sick or got pulled into a work emergency. But I was already ahead of him. No, I want to be there, I told him quietly. This is Brenda's night. Everything should be perfect. What I hadn't mentioned was that earlier that day, I'd gotten an email that changed everything. Justin, the CEO of Brenda's firm, wanted to meet the mysterious founder of Solera Capital. Me. And he'd be at the gala. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. For the first time in a long while, I smiled, not a forced, polite one, but something deeper. One born of knowing exactly what was coming. Brenda had no clue her flawless promotion party was about to turn into a much bigger reveal. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's letting the truth come out. And that night promised a reveal to remember. The Whitmore estate had been transformed into something that looked like a Pinterest wedding met a Fortune 500 investor retreat. Catherine said it was elegant and elevated. To me, it looked more like a showroom with too much crystal. Tables sparkled with stemware, ice sculptures melted gracefully under the Florida heat, and a harpist played next to a fountain dedicated to, you guessed it, Brenda Johnson. I couldn't help but wonder if the gala budget had swallowed her entire bonus. Emma, she called out, striding in like royalty. Her silk dress shimmered in the lights. The catering crew's waiting. Keep them in line, and please, her eyes swept over my simple black dress. Stay out of sight. I nodded with a polite grin. Of course, Brenda. I'll make sure everything goes off without a hitch. My grandfather always used to say, success is like a glacier, most people only notice the tip, but the real weight is what's underneath. I never truly understood what he meant, not until I became that glacier myself. I'm Emma Johnson, and this is the story of how I went from being the family oddball in my sister's picture-perfect world to watching her flawless image shatter in one unforgettable evening. I was raised in a snug little apartment perched above my family's Cuban bakery in Little Havana, Miami. By the time most kids were learning multiplication, I already knew what it meant to earn your keep. At 9, I was filling pastry boxes and memorizing which regulars preferred pastels over palmiers. By 13, I was tallying inventory and spotting errors in my uncle's accounting sheets that even he missed. Numeros. Grandpa would call, waving a post-it note with smudged ink. I'd spring up and hurry over, eager to help. We're overspending on guava puree, I'd point out. But if we order in bulk with the cafe down the block. He'd laugh and tap my forehead. Business brain on young shoulders, he'd say with pride. You're gonna build something big one day, kiddo. While my classmates were busy scoring goals on the soccer field, I was knee-deep in profit margins and scalability studies. My parents poured everything into getting me through school, working from sunup to past midnight just to cover my scholarship to NYU. I owed them more than good grades, I owed them a future. By 23, I had built a microloan platform driven by data that started making waves in immigrant neighborhoods, communities like the one I grew up in. I called it Solera Capital. And by 28, that little platform had grown into a multi-million-dollar venture. Still, I stayed out of the limelight. I liked it better that way. Then I met Stephen. It happened at this cozy, dusty used bookstore off Coral Way. I was in yoga pants and a worn-out college tee, half lost in a finance article on my tablet when he accidentally toppled over a stack of books next to me. Whoa, sorry about that, he said, crouching to help. I laughed, brushing off a paperback. It's all good. I'm Emma. Stephen, he said, offering a hand. How about I buy you a cafecito to make up for the chaos? That cafecito turned into lunch, and lunch turned into everything else. Stephen wasn't chasing Wall Street dreams, he taught civics at a public high school. Down to earth, kind, and passionate about making a difference. He saw people, not just potential. 6 months in, he proposed. I said yes without blinking. My parents were overjoyed. Brenda, my sister? Not so much. We've always been opposites, Brenda and I. She chose the fast-track, Ivy League business school, a high-stakes climb up the corporate ladder, designer heels, and an even sharper attitude. She was the marketing director for Vallon & Cross, a top-tier investment firm in Miami. Prestige was her playground. And while she always said she loved me, she made it clear she didn't exactly see me as her equal. She made that especially obvious during one family dinner in Coconut Grove. Swirling her wine like she was judging it for a competition, she looked over and said, "So, still juggling the bakery and that little app of yours?" I could have told her that little app had just landed a multi-year contract with one of the largest private equity firms in the Southeast. But I didn't. Maybe part of me liked being underestimated, it let me move in silence. Yeah, I said, sipping my cafe calmly. Still doing both. She smirked. Well, someone's gotta keep the pastries flowing. Not everyone can get fast-tracked into a senior position, right? Her friend Larry jumped in, trying to keep the peace as always. Brenda just wrapped a huge campaign for Vallon & Cross. The CEO even thanked her personally. What no one at that table knew was that her beloved firm had been using software from Solera Capital, my company, for the past year. And they were about to deepen the relationship. That's amazing, I said with a genuine smile. Brenda lit up, assuming she'd scored a win. Life went on like that for a while, Brenda throwing subtle jabs, and Stephen quietly nudging me to let them roll off my back. Then the big announcement dropped. Brenda was throwing a high-profile gala to celebrate her promotion to senior director. During the planning dinner, she turned to me with this sugary sweet smile that was sharp enough to cut glass. Emma, you've got experience with food service and events, right? Think you could handle the catering crew? Mom clapped like someone just suggested the solution to world peace. That's perfect. Emma runs her own business, she'll keep everything in check. Brenda looked at me like she'd just appointed me queen of the kitchen. I matched her look with a calm smile. Of course. I'd be happy to help. Later that night, Stephen took me aside, eyes clouded with guilt. You don't have to do this, he whispered. We can come up with something, say you're sick or had a last-minute client call. But my gears were already turning. No, I said softly. I actually want to be there. It's a big night for Brenda. Everything should go perfectly. What no one else at that table knew. That morning, I'd received an email from none other than Justin, the CEO of Brenda's firm. He wanted to meet the elusive founder of Solera Capital. Me. And he'd be attending the gala. Suddenly, it all clicked into place. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled, not to be polite or to smooth things over, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Brenda had no idea the night she thought would crown her was about to become something else entirely. Sometimes, the best kind of revenge isn't revenge at all, it's letting the truth speak for itself. And tonight? It was going to speak loud and clear. The Whitmore estate looked like someone tried to cross a luxury real estate listing with a Pinterest dream board. Catherine called it elegant and elevated. Personally, I thought it felt like a stockbroker's wedding reception. There were crystal glasses at every place setting, ice sculptures sweating under the Florida heat, and even a harpist playing beside a fountain labeled the Brenda Johnson Garden. I couldn't help but wonder if her event budget had swallowed her entire bonus. Emma, she called out, sweeping in like royalty. Her silk gown sparkled under the chandeliers. The catering team's here. Keep them in check. And please, she glanced at my simple black dress, stay behind the scenes. I gave her a cool nod. Of course, Brenda. I'll make sure everything goes off without a hitch. Stephen gently squeezed my arm. We can leave, you know. Right now. I gave him a calm smile. No need, I said. Everything's unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to. Back in the kitchen, the catering crew looked like they were hanging on by a thread. Turns out Brenda had pulled a classic Brenda, changing key details at the very last second. Miss Johnson, a young server asked, her voice tight with nerves. Your sister says the champagne needs to be passed out precisely at 8:15 for her speech, but also, she wants it served constantly throughout the night. And we're short 2 servers. I smiled, steady and reassuring. Don't stress, I told her. I've survived Saturday rushes in a bakery with no AC. We'll be fine. I've got your back. If you've ever had someone you love look right through you, like you were born to be behind them instead of beside them, then you'll understand why what happened next didn't just shift the mood. It changed everything. And if you want to know how quiet confidence can sometimes be louder than any spotlight, stick around. You're gonna want to hear what happened next. Over the next hour, I worked shoulder to shoulder with the catering staff, timing courses, tweaking presentation, making sure the champagne never stopped flowing. All while watching the entrance like a hawk, mentally checking off names as each guest arrived. Meanwhile, Brenda floated around the party like she owned the stars, sipping way too much Prosecco and laughing a little too hard at whatever her colleagues said. I caught a bit of one of her conversations. A cluster of executives in sleek suits leaned in as she smirked. Have you seen Emma? She said, letting out a light, airy laugh. That's my sister, she's with the catering team tonight. Honestly, it's where she's most comfortable. Poor girl. A polite, tight-lipped wave of chuckles followed. Some people just aren't cut out for this kind of world, she added, with the fake humility of someone who believes they're being gracious. Then our mom, Samantha, chimed in with that signature sweet tone of hers. We've always tried to make Emma feel included. That's what family does, after all. But with her background, well, there's only so much we can do. I walked past them, silent, carrying another tray of hors d'oeuvres. My face didn't give anything away, but inside? I was fire and steel. At exactly 7:55, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my CFO. All signed. Everything's in place. We're greenlit. I allowed myself the smallest smile. Right on schedule. Brenda, now rosy-cheeked and riding a wave of attention, was mid-anecdote with another group. When Stephen first brought his girlfriend around, my sister, I genuinely thought he was kidding. A baker and an app developer? Huh. Then Samantha jumped in again, clearly trying to soften the jab. We're actually thinking of helping her with a small condo. Nothing fancy. Not too close to Coral Gables, of course, but something practical. And right then, the room shifted. There was a hush, like a breeze before a storm. Heads turned. Justin had arrived. Brenda nearly stumbled in her heels trying to greet him. Mr. Vallon. We're so honored to have you tonight, she gushed. Justin, dressed in a sharp navy suit, scanned the crowd slowly. His eyes landed on me. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. Brenda let out a nervous little laugh. Oh, don't mind her, that's just my sister, Emma. She's helping with the catering. Let me walk you through the marketing deck I put together. Justin didn't move. He kept looking at me. Wait, he said. Isn't that? I handed my tray off to one of the servers and stepped forward. Brenda leaned in, panic rising behind her eyes. Emma, please, she hissed. Mr. Vallon doesn't need a drink. Just go back to the kitchen and... Hello, Justin, I said, calm as ever. Glad you could make it tonight. Recognition snapped into place on his face. Mrs. Johnson. I wasn't expecting to see you, working the floor at your own celebration. Brenda's voice came out sharp, almost cracking. Wait, what are you? Justin didn't let her finish. Well, considering Solera Capital just finalized its acquisition of a majority stake in Vallon and Cross, he said, I assumed this event was to announce the merger. He turned to me with a small, knowing smile. Or were you planning to keep that under wraps a bit longer? The room went dead silent. The harpist stopped mid-note. Even the ice in the glasses seemed to freeze. Brenda's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. "There has to be some mistake," she said, voice barely a whisper. "Emma's, she's just a baker. She runs a small shop in Little Havana." Justin gave a low, amused chuckle. "Emma Johnson is the founder and CEO of Solera Capital," he said. "As of this evening, she owns 51% of my firm and, by extension, your department." He looked back at me. "Those analytics solutions you suggested? Game-changing. My tech team hasn't stopped talking about them." Across the room, Samantha sank into a chair like the air had left her body. This can't be real," she said faintly. "Emma doesn't, she couldn't possibly." "Oh, but I can," I replied softly. And in that stunned stillness, my voice carried like thunder. "Solera Capital has always been mine. And as of 10 minutes ago, we officially own the majority of Vallon and Cross." I turned to face Brenda directly. "Which includes the marketing division." Brenda's lips parted. No sound came out. "But, all those times you wrote me off," I said, finishing her thought. "Like I didn't belong. Like I should be grateful just to orbit your world." Stephen finally pushed through the crowd, eyes wide with disbelief. "Emma, why didn't you ever tell me? Would it have made a difference?" I looked at him, searching his face. "Would it have changed how you stood up for me?" I asked quietly. "Because when you thought I had nothing, you didn't." He had no answer. Just silence. Justin cleared his throat, voice steady. "Well, seeing as everyone's here, shall we make it official?" he said. "Solera Capital now leads Vallon and Cross." "Gladly," I said. Then I turned to Brenda and offered a smile, not smug, not cruel. Just honest. "I believe you had a speech planned for tonight. Would you like to give it? Or should I?" Her hands trembled. Her face drained of color. And without a word, she turned and left the room. Samantha followed her, speechless. I reached for a fresh champagne flute from a tray and gave it a gentle tap with my fingernail. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, stepping forward into the center of the room, "if I could have your attention." The ripple from that moment didn't just echo through the party. It split the story of my family right down the middle. And we were only just getting started. Stephen had drifted to the back of the room, looking like someone who just realized they'd been watching the wrong movie the whole time. My mother, Samantha, had vanished, probably gone chasing after Brenda. After the merger announcement, my dad, Benjamin Johnson, the quietest man at any party, stood by the bar, turning an empty glass in his hand like it held the answers to everything. Then Justin walked over, smiling like he'd just watched the best show in town. "Well," he said, a glint of humor in his eye, "that might be the most memorable corporate reveal I've ever witnessed. I have to ask though, why let them believe you were just a baker all this time?" I took a slow sip of champagne and let the question hang in the air before answering. "Because when people think you're beneath them, they stop pretending. You see who they really are." Justin nodded slowly, a bit more serious now. "Well, their loss is clearly our gain. I look forward to working with you properly this time." As the night started winding down, Brenda reappeared. Her makeup had been retouched, her expression forced into something resembling calm, but her eyes gave her away, she was fuming. She walked straight up to me, voice low and shaking with anger. "You humiliated me in front of every major contact I've spent years building." I didn't flinch. "No, Brenda. You did that yourself. I just didn't cover for you this time." She snapped, "I'll resign. I refuse to work for you." "That's your call," I said evenly. "But before you walk out, understand this, every major firm in Miami saw what happened here tonight. Your comments about people like me, said in front of your own CEO, those won't go unnoticed." Her shoulders drooped just slightly. "What do you want from me?" she asked, quieter now. "I want you to grow." Starting Monday, you'll be working with our new community outreach team. We're launching a program to help small businesses and family restaurants use modern financial tools. She blinked. And who exactly do I report to? My mother, I said. She still runs the family bakery. By choice. She'll be heading the initiative. Brenda opened her mouth, then closed it again, stunned into silence. That's when Samantha appeared behind her. Emma, she said, voice wavering, can we please talk in private? We're family. I turned to face her. Family? For 3 years, you sat me with the catering team, cropped me out of every group photo, and talked about me like I was some charity case. When exactly did I stop being family? We didn't know, she said, almost a whisper, that you had money. And there it was. That's the problem, I said. You only thought I was worthy of respect once you found out I wasn't broke. That's when my father, Benjamin, stepped forward and set his empty glass down. Everyone turned toward him. She's right, Samantha, he said, voice steady and low. We treated her unfairly. He looked at me then, really looked. I watched our values slip away, he continued. We stopped teaching dignity and started worshipping image. Maybe it took tonight to finally see it. Then Stephen stepped closer. By then, most of the crowd had filtered out. It was just us now, what was left of the family, and all the broken assumptions. Why didn't you tell me? He asked softly. I wanted to, I said. More times than I can count. But every time your family talked down to me, and you just stood there, I realized something. If you couldn't respect me as a baker, you didn't deserve to know me as a CEO. I love you, he said, voice cracking. Love without respect? I shook my head. That doesn't last, Stephen. Every time you stayed quiet while they mocked me, that was your answer. I can change, he said, desperate now. I get it. I understand. I studied him for a long second. You understand now that I'm rich, I said. That's not growth, Stephen. That's survival instinct. I slipped off my wedding ring and placed it gently on the marble table. I filed the paperwork last week. You'll be hearing from my attorney soon. Emma, please. But I'd already turned to Brenda. I'll be meeting with Valen and Cross's board tomorrow, I told her. But you? You're expected at the bakery on Monday. My mom doesn't tolerate lateness. Then I turned to Samantha. The estate looks beautiful tonight. Enjoy it while you can. Her eyes narrowed, uncertain. The bank approved my bid this morning, I added. As of now, this estate is the new home of the Johnson Foundation for Opportunity. It'll serve as a nonprofit hub for training and uplifting Florida's service workers. The look on their faces was almost surreal. But I didn't stick around. Outside, the Florida breeze brushed past my face. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Coming to the bakery for a late dinner? Dad made your favorite. I smiled. Be there in 20 minutes later, I was right back where I started, at the family bakery. I was barefoot, sitting at the counter with an empanada in one hand and my dad grinning at me from the stovetop. That party, Mom said, shaking her head. People like that, they only learn the hard way. Dad chuckled. Success without humility, he said, is like sugar without yeast. Might taste sweet, but it'll never rise. And there I was, CEO of Solera Capital, wiping down counters, laughing with my parents, and eating my favorite food in the place that built me. Funny thing is, the little girl who once counted coins at the register now managed capital in the billions. But none of that ever compared to what really mattered. My real wealth? It's always been the same: dignity, honesty, and the courage to know exactly who I am. So if you're reading this and thinking about your own story, about the times you were overlooked, written off, or told you weren't enough, I'd love to hear it. Drop your story in the comments. Let's create a space where quiet strength is seen and valued. And if you believe success means more when it's carried with grace, and that respect should never depend on someone's title or paycheck, subscribe and stay connected. I built what I have one brick at a time. But it all started the day I decided no one else gets to tell me what I'm worth. So keep building. Especially when no one's clapping. That's when your character, not just your career, is truly being built.